Our guest today is Robert Hulse. Robert is a good friend of Unite Planet, and his website is macclesfieldufosociety.co.uk. Robert has had a lifetime of UFO experiences and has many implants inside his body. And the main message throughout the whole interview is that they are here to help us, and we should not fear anything related to UFOs and aliens. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the program. Thank you for watching.
Right, here we are in glorious fields in North Wales, the tribal conscious gathering, with great surroundings, wonderful people. One of those wonderful people we've got right here, Mr. Robert Hulse. How are you, Robert?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very good.
It's great to be with you all.
Oh, it's
You're
great.
all
Great
wonderful people, and
likewise,
you're
to
my
you,
kind
likewise.
of people.
Oh,
Wonderful.
brilliant.
Yeah,
And
likewise, yeah.
So we're going to talk about well, wherever it flows with you. Really, we're going to your experiences and anything that you think's relevant to. I know it's a big wow.
It's a big story, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've had ET contact all my life. Something that runs in my family. My mum, my sisters, my grandmother, my niece, my nephew. We've all been taken, and it's something that continues on throughout our lives. My mum was still getting taken when she was 80. So I expect, I'm 67 now, and I expect it will carry on, as I only a couple of weeks ago had a visit from them where they gave me injections, one injection here inside left bicep, a double inside right bicep, and also did some work above my navel, which left me with quite a large bruise over that area. So I'd like to stress that I'm not bothered by any of this at all. I've got completely used to it.
It's happened since, is it 7? Was it about 7? First, was it?
Well, the first thing that happened to me, I was 2 years old.
2 years old. Oh, right.
And I was in the street waiting for my mum to bring my sister out into the street, who was 21 months younger than me. And a light bulb shaped light came down and hovered in front of me in the street. It was like a yellowish white light, probably like an old 200 watt light bulb, so about that sort of size, with the bulbous part at the bottom. Just hovered there, I don't know, 15-20 seconds maybe, and then it just disappeared. And the incredible thing about that is that even though I was 2 years old, I can still see it. I can see the houses across the road. I know what the weather was like. It was a still, sort of drizzly, sort of grey sort of day, typical Macclesfield weather, and that was the beginning of it. I mean, I suppose in retrospect that the first thing that gave me a clue that I was a little bit different to most people is that when I was a baby in the pram, I remember one of my aunties talking to me in baby language, goo goo goo, ga ga, all that sort of stuff, and I'm lying there thinking, you stupid woman, I understand English perfectly well, and feeling so frustrated that I couldn't reply and speak to her. So that's a very strong memory of mine. And then when I was 7 years old, Mum and Dad and my sister Jane, we went on holiday to Prestatyn in North Wales, and a place called Tulaka Warren, which was caravans and chalets, very primitive really. And Jane and I were taken for the first time that I know from the beach.
Jane's your sister.
Jane's my sister, yeah. And we were missing for 4 hours. My parents were frantic. When we went missing, it was a lovely sunny day. and we were playing in the sand, and then 4 hours later we found ourselves on the single track road which went through the camp, and it was raining, and it was obviously much later in the afternoon, and we were both very disorientated. Jane has a better memory of these things than I do. She can even remember the clothes that we were wearing at the time. But it was raining quite hard. We were taken in by a family who saw us, and then they went to find our parents. And of course, they were so relieved to see us again. But we didn't know what had happened to us, and so we couldn't explain to our parents where we'd been. Goodness knows what they thought. Probably thought we'd been naughty, but I'm sure that must happen to a lot of children who get taken. And then when I got home from that holiday, I had a period of about, I don't know, a couple of weeks anyway, where I had terrible nosebleeds, and we had the old-fashioned sink, and when you threw the water on your face, to wash your face, as soon as the water and my hands touched my face, blood would stream out of my nose into the water, and that lasted for a couple of weeks. So I'm absolutely certain that I had an implant put in my nose, either when I got home or on the holiday.
Was that the thought then, or is this in retrospect afterwards?
It's retrospect, because you don't put the pieces together when you're young, you know. And I've never had a nosebleed before, and I've never had one since. So it was very definitely because of that. Then a couple of years later, Jane and I were on holiday in Llandudno with Mum and Dad, and we were taken from the digs in Llandudno, and we were placed down below the road which runs all the way around Great Orme, and from the road down to the sea is probably about 100-foot drop, and Jane and I were placed down by the sea. So we were forced to climb up the rocks. It's quite steep too, to get back onto the road. And we got about halfway up, and I made the mistake of looking down, and I froze. And my sister, who's a couple of years younger than me, she was 7, I was 9 at this time, she helped me to carry on. Then we got up to the wall, which goes all the way around the road, and I got her over the wall, and then I did the same thing again, looked down, froze, and she helped me to get over. She talked me over. So then we were on the tarmac road, and we both walked just a few paces, and then the next thing we were back in the digs again, and my parents were none the wiser to any of it. So that was another abduction experience.
So do you actually remember anything from, or is it?
No. It's rare for people to remember what actually happened to them when they're taken. I have friends who have total recall of that, but that's very, very rare. I do have some memory of being on board ship, but that's from much later in my life. In 2008, I think it was, when I was with David Caton, my very, very dear friend and research colleague, known David for 25 years or more. We were down in Wiltshire studying the crop circles, and from his caravan, which I'd towed down there at Orr, the campsite at Orr in the Pewsey Vale, I was taken one night and taken to a location very near to Orr, where I'm absolutely certain that there's an underground alien base. I know it's there for certain, and I think that's where I was taken. But when I was being brought back, I was aware of being in the craft and in a room with a machine which I couldn't see, but the effect of the machine was it created a buzzing sound which started quite low but very quickly increased in intensity, so that every atom of my body was vibrating, and it was just like you got your head in an angry beehive. It was very powerful, and I believe by that method they're able to pass you through solid material, i.e. the roof of the caravan. And so they replaced me into my bed in the caravan, but I was wide awake, and even though I was awake in the caravan, I could still hear this buzzing sound, which I found very disconcerting. I'm not that bothered about being taken by the ETs. I'm quite used to that.
I was going to say, you must be used to it now.
Yeah, but the noise, it was about 4 o'clock in the night, you know, maybe 3:30. So, and it was a very quiet location in the countryside, so that having this noise was just incongruous, you know, and it just didn't feel right at all. And David, who was in the bed just across the walkway in the caravan from me, he was also awake, but he could not hear the sound at all. So therefore it's quite obvious that is a focused beam, focused on the individual who's been taken. So strangely, about, I don't know, well, of course I was quite agitated at the time, and we're discussing this with Dave, and within 10 minutes, I would say, both of us were sound asleep. Now that's completely impossible. In that kind of state, I would probably have laid awake for an hour or longer, you know. But I didn't. And both of us went to sleep. Woke up about 8 o'clock the following morning, I guess, and felt okay, and went for a shower as I usually do. And I stood in the shower. When the hot water hit me and hit my tadger, it stung a bit. So I thought, what the hell's that, you know? And so I had a look, and I had a cut of about, I would say, maybe, well, let's say 1/3 of an inch long on my willy, under the foreskin. And I also had 2 very pronounced puncture marks on my stomach, in the area sort of where a woman's ovaries would be. Okay, there and there. And also felt inside my stomach, felt it was sore, as if I'd had an operation, and I'm quite sure that's exactly what I had. And that soreness lasted for about 2 weeks, even after I got home. But I feel as though they were probably helping me. Maybe I had something wrong that needed.
Over the years, have you kind of any idea why it's happening? Why they would be taking you doing these things?
Well, they look after me.
So you don't, you're not, you feel safe. You're not scared of them.
I'm not scared at all. I've seen 4 different types, and
so different species that have taken you, that you had contact with, and so
yes, different species. I mean, one of
do
them.
they differ? Do each species differ in the way they conduct themselves with you, or are some a bit more benevolent? Or
they were. One of them was when I was totally awake. I gave a talk in Adelaide in South Australia.
Yeah.
I went on the radio, on the ABC radio at their studios in Adelaide, answering questions on crop circles live on air to all of Australia, which was quite something. And I also did it to publicise the talk that I was giving for a local group, which I didn't charge anything for. I was just pleased to help them with funds, you know, for what they were doing. And this strange looking guy came to the talk, and he didn't sit with everybody else. He sat in the window, sort of near to the door, and he was he looked in his 30s, I guess, athletic build, about 5'9", 5'10", bald hair, no bald headed, I knew this guy was not normal at all.
What's similar to that then?
Yeah, very, very similar. Yeah.
But not quite as tall as me.
Not as handsome as you, Bernie. He, I've lost what I was going to say now. I'm only kidding.
5'9", athletic, bald.
No, look, I'm only kidding. I know where I was. That's okay. So after I'd given the talk, he came up to me and he told me something about the crop circles, because people asked me what I thought the purpose of the crop circles was, and through other stuff that I'd learned, other evidence, I was firmly of the opinion that they were a means of infusing energy into the ley line system, and that energy is crucial for all life on the earth. It's what invigorates life, whether it's animal or plant or anything. And that's another story. But so he came up to me and he said, "You're absolutely right about the crop circles, and the different patterns allow for different frequencies of energy to be infused." That's all he said. And then he took my left hand with his right hand and pulled it out, so it's kind of out like that. And then he started to engage with the energy, because I'm sensitive to energy, so I can feel that quite easily. He moved it up my arm, then back down again. I can feel it all the way. Ooh, I can feel it today too, very strong. And then he was teasing the energy off the ends of my fingers. And with his left hand, he was moving the energy across my solar plexus towards this area. And then, as I say, I'm used to feeling energy, and the strongest energy I've ever felt has been in churches and cathedrals, which is quite strong. But this all of a sudden went like 100 times stronger than anything I've ever felt. It wasn't unpleasant, and I felt that his aura and mine had merged. And all I could do was smile at this guy, a big beaming smile, and he sent a big beaming smile back to me. And then he reached forward and embraced me, and then he turned around, walked out of the building, never said another word. And I reckon he probably got in his ship and went off planet, because he was definitely an ET without a doubt. So he was the human ET. And then I was down at Roy Dutton's house in Torquay. I don't know, 10 years ago. Roy was a very dear old friend of mine, and it was I had a nice bedroom which overlooked Tor Bay, and it was a full moon that night, and I could. It was lovely to see the moon on the bay, you know. So I had the curtains wide open, and I lay there in bed. And all of a sudden, I felt my body start to vibrate, which has happened before, but this was really quite strong. And then the next thing that happened was my heels began to tingle. So I reached down the bed to see if I could feel what was wrong, you know, but I couldn't feel anything. It just felt quite normal. So I just lay there, and then the next thing that happened was that it felt just as if somebody was pressing down on my stomach from above the bed, and it was quite a firm pressure that was being pressed on my stomach. Then paralysis began to set in. It moved down my legs to my feet, and once that was paralysed, it moved from my stomach up to the top of my head. Now fortunately I had my eyelids open at the time, because otherwise I'm sure if they were shut I would not have been able to open them. But as is always the case, almost always as far as I know, if you've got your eyeballs open when you're in this paralysed state, you can still move them and you can look around the room. So I was able to do that, and I was quite aware that it was an ET encounter, and I'm quite used to it. So I really wanted to speak to them. So I said, I was in my mind, I was trying to say, "Speak to me, please," but of course my vocal cords wouldn't work. I couldn't do anything. So but through some great effort, I managed to just move my head maybe a tiny amount so that I could peer over the bedclothes and look. And standing in front of the wardrobe was a being. And then that being was about 4 foot tall. He was in exactly the same shape as a grey, with the bigger head. The eyes were exactly the same as a grey's eyes, and black, absolutely black. But the whole of the body was made out of light. So, and the light did not illuminate the room at all. It was contained within the body of this being. But it felt as though as soon as I saw the being, and the being recognised that I could see him or her or whatever, the being went across and went through the wall. And as soon as the being was gone, the paralysis left me. So I got out of bed quickly, looked through the window to see if I could see a craft above the place, but I couldn't. But I had no doubt at all that was an ET encounter of some kind.
So have you had any kind of communication with them at all? Or
yes,
yeah.
I have, and I'll come to that in a second. Yeah. But sometime after that, I saw a video called the Afterlife Investigations, the Skull Report. And what that was an attempt by mediums and the British Psychical Society, or whatever it is in London, to prove the existence of the afterlife. And they had people like Rupert Sheldrake as a scrutineer of what was going on, and others. And part of the experiment they did, this was all in a locked cellar at a place called Scole in East Anglia. And one of the things they did was to take a camcorder, put a film in it on a tripod, and point it at a mirror on the wall, back to which reflected to another mirror and back into the lens of the camera, the eyepiece rather. So they shouldn't have been filming anything particularly. So the mediums did their stuff, and then they examined the film. And on the film there was a lot of writing, there were faces of people, but most importantly there was an identical being to the one I saw in my bedroom at Roy Dutton's, which to me proves that these beings that are ET in some way are also in our spirit dimension, which is a very interesting thing to think about, So yes, so you asked me if I'd had communication. Yeah. About 2.5 years ago, I was in bed at home, got a king size bed, and I lie on my stomach quite often when I'm asleep, So I was lying on my stomach with my head looking towards the bigger side of the bed, where my wife used to sleep, say, And then I felt somebody tugging the bedclothes on my side, and I thought, hello, I've got a visitor, but I'm okay with it, so it's not a problem. So without getting up, I turned my head and to look, and as I'm moving I realised I'm moving in slow motion, and then I turned, and right there was this being, a type I'd never seen before. And it was like a bronzy sort of a colour, and he didn't seem to be fully materialised in this dimension, because his head was like there, and I could see down to about here, say, and so I imagined the rest of him was materialised in the living room, through the floor and in the living room, sort of, But anyway, I stared at this being for 30 seconds anyway, and he was quite different. He had large, very large round eyes. I could tell that because you could see the bone structure. The eyelids were not only came down from the top, but they came up from the bottom. I suppose like a lizard's eyes sort of do, you know. And the eyelids were kind of slanted. The part of the eye that you could see made a slant. So if you didn't look carefully, you could think maybe it had slanty eyes. But because I could see the skull shape, I could see that they were big round eyes. So that was one important thing. The other thing was, on the bridge of the nose were 3 or 4 very, very deep wrinkles. You know, we screw our nose up when we get wrinkles here. Well, these were of a different order altogether. So, you know, really very, very marked. The other thing was that the being was bald, had no hair, and very prominently on the top of the head, running from the back of the head to the front, or vice versa, was a very pronounced ridge, which I don't think it was jagged or anything like that. It was just a ridge that was raised up down the middle of the forehead, of the skull. And after about 30 seconds of examining him as carefully as I could, he spoke to me telepathically in my head, and he said, "The time has come for you to know more of the truth." And I thought, great, because I'm ready. And the next thing I knew, it was morning, and I got no memory whatsoever of anything that had happened. Yes. However, it might have been the following day or day after, I don't know.
Have you had snippets come back to you?
Well, no, I haven't. But I had a pain in my skull, on the crown of my head here, and I touched it, and there was like a wound in the crown of my skull, and so I wasn't going to touch it much because it was painful. And over the next few days or a week, I noticed that my skull on top was also tender, and then I started to develop a ridge on my skull. So fortunately it stopped growing after a while, but it's still tender.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, even now. Yeah. So maybe that's more of the truth that I needed to know. Perhaps I am
one of those
kin to that type of that race of being. So I hope I'm not rambling on too much.
No, it's
okay.
No.
So look, I know I'm connected with the ETs.
Have you got any children or anything?
Yes, I have.
What about them? You know how you said it runs through the family?
It does run through the family. I've got 3 children,
Have they been
and I've got
affected?
4 grandchildren, and I'm quite sure they will be affected. But you know, they're not really comfortable with any of this. My wife hated it with a passion, and so I don't really discuss it much with them.
So even if they had experiences, you're unaware of it? Yeah.
Well, I'm aware of some,
Right.
but you know, it's okay for me because you know this is who I am.
You're obviously comfortable.
I am very comfortable with it, and that's another thing I want to get across in this interview is that you know you'll get people who say they're contactees or whatever, abductees, and the message you get from them is one of fear.
Yeah. I was going to ask you actually, have you had any fearful experience? I mean, obviously,
No.
there must have been certain times when because it's a strange experience, isn't it? To have,
It is.
to be seeing these,
Any strange
feeling these kind of
experiences,
things. But I
yeah.
suppose now you're used to it.
Yeah.
Have you had any sort of
well, there's
fearful
certain
where you just thought this is not right? Or...
Yes, certainly. Certain things. I mean, back in about 2000, I think it was, I was in bed, again I started to vibrate. Started at my feet and moved up my body. I thought it was an earthquake happening actually at first, until I realised it wasn't an earthquake, it was me that was doing the vibrating. And then I started to levitate, and also there's a certain amount of paralysis involved with the levitation as well, and I didn't like it because you're out of control, you know. And so I made this. I had this thing in my head that if I could manage to move somehow and touch Jenny, even if I could just touch her with a finger or something, I could break the spell somehow, and it'd be okay. And with a lot of effort, I managed to do that. And as soon as I touched her, boom, back on the bed again. And of course, I knew it was an ET thing, so I looked around the bedroom to see if I could see anybody, but I couldn't see anything, and I went to sleep. Following morning, I got up, went in the shower, as I always do. Again, hot water hit me, and as soon as it hit my tadger, it stung. And I looked down, and there upon it was a perfect equilateral triangle. Just the outline of it, not the infill bit, you know. Perfect. And I didn't react as you would think, you know, because you'd think you'd go mad, you know, you'd really be angry or something like that, or you want to tell somebody. I didn't. I just was dead chilled about it, no problem, you know. And after about 4 or 5 days, I guess, it just faded away and it was gone. But I think that kind of we're conditioned to take it just in our stride. That's what happens. About I don't know, a week, 2 weeks later, I went with my dear friend Dave Caton to the Leeds UFO conference, run by Graham Birdsall, which was fantastic. Okay. And one of the speakers was Yvonne Smith, an American lady who was well known for helping people who are abductees, you know, with regression and all that kind of stuff, you know. Although I point out I've never been regressed, all my memories are what my memories are. And after part way through her talk, she was showing, you know, pictures on the screen, and then she put this picture up which was mostly denim, a piece of denim, but there was a hole cut in it and there was a piece of skin showing through the hole with a red triangle on it. And she said to the audience, I bet you'll never guess where this is. Of course, I think quite a few people did guess. And of course it was his tadger, you know. And I nearly fell off the bloody chair. And Dave also, because you know.
So you've got similar experiences to quite a few similar stories with other
yes,
people.
I think I have a feeling that the person that related to was one of the Allagash abductees, which is a famous case in America, or America, Canada. So that was that. And then, of course, I suppose the most incredible thing has been the fact that people might say I'm a shapeshifter, whatever, but my appearance does change from time to time.
Yeah, you mentioned that yesterday. Yeah,
and it's happened, I don't know, at least 8 times anyway, in different places.
And this is other people telling you.
Because you said you don't know, you're not aware of it yourself when it's happening.
I'm not aware that it happens usually at all. And sometimes it's not all of my face, sometimes it's only half. So half of my face will be human, the other half will be ET.
And have you heard of other people saying?
Yes, I know quite a few people who have the same experience, who are like me. One lady is a dear friend of mine, I can say Dr. Mary Helen Hensley in Ireland, because she's quite okay and open about these things. She has the same, she had exactly the same experience as me, and she has the same implants as I have. certainly some of that I have one here, just here, and that's a place where I know several other people who have implants there, which gives me pain. So if you're watching and you have pain in this thumb, and it seems to stem from between the base of the thumb and the wrist, and you don't know why, then there might be a chance that you've got an implant in there. Okay, you might not see it as clearly as I do. I mean, I have a lump on there, which
yes,
you
I
can
see.
you can see it.
From that angle, I
you
can
know?
definitely see that. Yes.
Yeah, that's from there.
Yes.
So, yeah. So what it's for, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a scar as well, isn't there? There's a little bit of a scar I can see.
Oh yeah, well I've got one there, which is an old scoop mark. I also have another one, which is here, but you can hardly see it these days. My mum had them in exactly the same place, and which I photographed, you know. Yeah, but this one's quite interesting, that you can hardly see now, because for years it was really very prominent, and it was very concave, is it? Like an ice cream scoop, taking it out of there, and it was like a brownish colour. The skin wasn't the same colour in that place, and when I had the visit from the ET with the ridge on the skull, and things started changing here, somehow or another I got a fresh blood supply to this scoop mark, and instead of it being concave, it started to thicken up until it was actually proud of my arm, and it was very, very pink in colour. And then over I don't know, a year or so after that, it started to go back down again and become quite normal. So it's just as if I've been repaired. Quite amazing.
Wow.
Quite amazing.